What if the 3I Atlas isn't just a piece of rock hurtling through space? What if what we're seeing is ... a spacecraft, an object with a purpose? Since its detection, the 3I Atlas has behaved in a way no natural body should. It changes speed, it changes direction, and the strangest thing, it emits heat, as if something inside it ... is still active. Images from the Atlas telescope show an elongated, metallic body, reflecting irregular light. Nothing like a comet. No tail, no gas emissions. But something pulsates inside precise thermal patterns at 3-second intervals. 3 seconds. Always the same. As if it was some kind of signal or ... communication. And when the data began to repeat itself, the system crashed. Servers crashed. Agencies shut down public access. No explanation was given. No official word, just silence. The kind of silence that appears when someone wants to hide something. The question is straightforward. Could there be something or someone inside the 3I Atlas? It all started with a strange point of light in the sky. Too small to attract attention, but too constant to ignore. At first, astronomers thought it was just another comet, an icy body crossing the solar system. But when the first data arrived, they were shocked. The object behaved like nothing they had ever seen before. 3I Atlas moved as if it had a destiny. It didn't just float, it adjusted its course. It changed speed, slowed down, then accelerated again. It was precise, almost programmed. Anyone looking at the graph could see it had control. Telescopes captured an unusual thermal pattern, exactly 3 seconds between each pulse of heat. A perfect sequence, without variations. Natural phenomena don't follow a clock. But this object ... seemed to follow a routine. When they compared the readings with those of Oumuamua, their astonishment grew. The same behavior, the same spontaneous acceleration. But Atlas was different, denser, hotter, more reactive. Some scientists even said it looked like an improved version, as if what had passed before had returned evolved. Initial images showed metallic reflections, surfaces that looked too smooth to have been formed by impact. There was something in the shadows, lines, angles, patterns, as if there were interlocking parts, structures, perhaps compartments. These weren't random shadows. They were shapes. Meanwhile, a strange interference began to emerge. Radios picked up short, modulated rumbles. Observatories reported system failures at the exact moment the 3I Atlas was being tracked, as if the object was emitting something that affected our equipment. No one officially admitted it, but the failures were real. Online forums filled with theories. Some said it was an alien probe. Others swore it was a covert human magnetic propulsion project. But no one could explain the public data. Nothing fit without sounding like a secret. A researcher in Hawaii anonymously reported that the object seemed to respond, that its temperature variations changed slightly when observed by ground-based sensors, as if it sensed it was being monitored. This information was never officially published, but it appeared in copies of internal reports before they were deleted. And when NASA announced that there were no anomalies, the scientific community reacted, because the anomalies were there in the very data they released. Cropped graphs, incomplete numbers, omitted passages. It was as if they wanted to close the matter quickly, but the more they hid, the more the mystery grew. Today, few speak openly about the 3I Atlas, but those who have seen the data up close say the same thing. It wasn't natural. A solid object with internal heat and a controlled path doesn't travel alone through space for no reason. There's something behind the 3I Atlas, something no one wants to admit publicly, because if it's what it seems, then we're not just observing a visitor, we're witnessing a presence. When the 3I Atlas appeared on the observatory screens, no one noticed right away. It was just another dot among millions. But as the hours passed, the data began to behave strangely. The object seemed to respond to the instruments observing it, as if, somehow, it knew it was being seen. It came from outside the solar system. No known route, no previous record. A completely anonymous visitor, silently cutting through space. But there was something different about the way it moved. It was smooth, steady, almost controlled. When the thermal readings were compared, the first serious doubt arose. The 3I Atlas wasn't frozen, as a rocky body should be. It maintained internal heat, even far from the sun, as if it had its own energy source, as if there were something alive inside. Some scientists began to suggest a risky hypothesis. What if the 3I Atlas wasn't just an object? What if it was a shelter capsule? A shelter designed to withstand millions of years wandering in space, a form of biological transportation. Infrared images showed curious patterns, alternating hot and cold zones, arranged symmetrically. Nothing like natural craters or cracks. It was as if the interior contained chambers, compartments, or organisms protected by layers of armor. An ESA engineer reported, off the record, something few have seen. The object's density didn't match that of rock or ice. It was too light for its size, as if it were hollow and perhaps inhabited. The debates heated up. Some said it was impossible for life to exist inside something from interstellar space. Others pointed out that there are microorganisms that survive vacuum, cold, and radiation. Perhaps the 3I Atlas is the cosmic equivalent of a seed, something carrying life, waiting for the right place to germinate. In the following weeks, the signals repeated. The energy pulses followed the same rhythm, 3 seconds apart. But once, the sequence failed. For an instant, the pulse came earlier than expected, as if something inside had moved. This put the astronomers on alert. Because a failure in something so precise indicates internal interference, and if this interference isn't an error, what is? Something is changing in the 3I Atlas, something that seems to be awakening. And when a structure changes in the silence of space, it's not the kind of thing that goes unnoticed. Some say it's just physics, others say it's biology. But no one dares to say what they really fear, that something might be alive inside. After the 3I Atlas was detected, data flowed rapidly for a few days. Graphs, spectra, measurements, all in real time. But then, suddenly, it disappeared. Websites went offline, links broke, and files deleted. It was the first sign that something was being hidden. Independent astronomers began to complain publicly. The data has been blocked, one said in a live broadcast. Hours later, the video disappeared from the internet. The channel was shut down, and the scientist was removed for security reasons. The official reason was never revealed. Within the agencies, the atmosphere was tense. Emails disappeared, meetings were cancelled. The few who spoke about the 3I Atlas received direct orders to close the subject. No official bulletin mentioned the object's name. It was as if it had never existed. Some employees leaked information through anonymous channels. They said the object showed unusual activity, that the heat readings changed on their own, that the cameras captured internal reflections, something moving beneath the surface. But none of this reached the public. In the press, the headlines were bland. Possible interstellar comet observed by NASA. No details, no images, but those watching behind the scenes noticed the change in tone. With each new update, less transparency, more silence. A retired astronomer gave an interview to local Honolulu radio. He said the 3I Atlas was responding to stimuli. A few minutes later, the program went off the air. The file was never released. It was as if someone was monitoring what could and couldn't be said. The same happened with amateur radio networks. Mysterious signals began to appear on frequencies used by observatories. Repeated sequences, always at regular intervals. Those trying to record the sound said the transmitters were interrupted, and the recordings corrupted all of them. Among the technicians, a rumor began to circulate that the object wasn't just emitting signals, it was intercepting communications, as if it was some kind of active receiver picking up transmissions from Earth. This hypothesis was never confirmed, but it was also never denied. In private groups, some scientists began to distance themselves from the project. They said they already knew too much and didn't want any trouble. Others disappeared from the digital map without explanation. Profiles were erased, resumes deleted, leaving no trace. It was the kind of disappearance that happens when someone is silenced. The teams that continued analyzing the 3I Atlas noticed something else. Every time the object was observed by radar, it decreased its thermal emission. It was as if it knew it was being watched, and when the readings stopped, the heat returned, a behavior no one could explain. This reaction sparked a new wave of fear. What if the object wasn't just a structure? What if it had some kind of minimal consciousness? A technology that recognizes when it's detected, isn't just operating, it's reacting. Internal reports began to change vocabulary. Words like comet or asteroid were replaced by anomaly, then structure, and finally unidentified object. That was the final term before all documents were classified. Nothing else came from the agencies, no statement, no denial. But this only fueled speculation. Because when science is silent, the public notices. And the silence in this case said much more than any official statement. It was the kind of silence that precedes something big. Some say the 3I Atlas hasn't disappeared. It's simply moved where the telescopes don't look. Others believe it continues observing, recording, waiting for the right moment. But there's an idea few have the courage to mention. What if this silence isn't ours, ... but it's... Something seems to be keeping a secret. Something that came from far away. And perhaps what's hidden inside the 3I Atlas ... is exactly why no one wants us to know. Because sometimes what space holds ... doesn't want to be discovered. For weeks, everything was silent. No new data, no new images. Until one morning, everything changed. A video, posted anonymously, appeared on astronomy forums and disappeared minutes later, but long enough to be downloaded and spread by anyone who was awake at that hour. The file showed something that shouldn't exist. The recording came from a European observatory. The coordinates matched the exact position of the 3I Atlas. In the images, a dot pulsed in the darkness, 3 seconds between each pulse, as always. But this time, the glow changed color, from white to amber, from amber to red, and then silence. But before the last pulse, something moved within the structure. An internal displacement captured by the thermal sensor, as if something had moved inside. The video was less than 30 seconds long, but the impact was devastating. Those who analyzed it frame by frame noticed internal shadows, strange contours, geometric shapes, too symmetrical to be natural, as if there were compartments. Some called it an optical illusion, others digital manipulation. But image experts confirmed the file was authentic, no cuts, no edits. And the scariest thing, it was encrypted with a code used only by space agencies. In other words, the video came from within. Hours later, the blocking began. Video channels were deleted, accounts closed, discussions deleted, but it was too late. The video had already spread to servers around the world, and the question became inevitable. What was inside the 3I Atlas? Analysis began. Engineers, scientists, curious onlookers, all trying to understand the color pattern, the pulse rhythm, the shape of the structure. An independent group concluded something alarming. The pulses resembled a type of binary communication. Curiously, the pattern was identical to that used by human probes. Precise time intervals, with pauses that resembled coded transmissions. But the origin was its own, not Earth's. It was as if the 3I Atlas was responding. Responding to what? No one knew. A retired astrophysicist was the first to suggest the unthinkable. He stated that the object could contain a synthetic life form, something between a machine and an organism. A living structure capable of emitting energy and reacting to its environment. A type of biological technology, something we didn't create, but perhaps ... inherited. Meanwhile, the radars picked up new echoes. It wasn't a signal echo. It was thermal feedback. The heat inside the object was slowly increasing, as if something was turning on, an awakening. The pulse pattern repeated for 3 days straight. Then it stopped completely. And when the observatories tried to track it, it had shifted position. Not much, but enough to startle any rational person. The 3I Atlas was no longer where it should have been. Internal reports spoke of anomalous activity and autonomous movement. Some said the object had reacted to a solar flare. But that didn't explain the change in direction, nor the sudden increase in energy. It was as if something had taken over, and it wasn't human. The theory that it was just a natural body began to crumble. The evidence pointed to something much more complex. An intelligent artifact, perhaps ancient, perhaps left to be found, or worse ... forgotten. The experts who analyzed the thermal waves noticed another detail. The pulse sequence repeated exactly like a heartbeat. 3 seconds apart, a slight, regular, organic variation. It was as if the 3I Atlas had a heart, and it was starting to beat again. A team tried sending radio signals to test for response. No direct response. But at the same time, thermal sensors picked up a sudden increase in heat. A kind of silent, invisible, yet evident reaction. It listened. Scientists called it passive interaction, but others were more direct. The object sensed the contact and responded in the only way it knew how. Heat, movement, life. Days later, another leak emerged. This time, an excerpt from an internal report. In it, a term never before used, habitable structure, and below a manually erased phrase, possible occupant in an inactive state. Someone read it, someone saw it. Since then, the 3I Atlas is no longer a simple astronomical enigma. It is a presence, something that doesn't speak but demonstrates, something that doesn't show itself but makes itself felt. And increasingly, it seems less like a visitor and more like a messenger. The video is gone, the files are gone, but people remember. The data still circulates, encrypted on secret servers, and the pattern keeps reappearing in radio signals, always the same, like a signature left in space, a reminder that it's still there. Some say the 3I Atlas doesn't travel, it waits. Others believe it's observing, gathering information. And still others say it's searching for something ... or someone. A civilization, a signal, family DNA, something that can only be found here. What if the 3I Atlas isn't just a visitor? What if it's a return? A scheduled arrival with a set time and a defined mission? Because maybe ... it's not trying to scare us. Maybe it's trying to recognize us. And when space sends something that seems alive, it's no longer just science. It's history, mystery, and threat all rolled into one. And worst of all, that body is moving again, and no one knows where. Soon after the video leaked, versions began to multiply. Each agency said something different. NASA claimed that the 3I Atlas was an ordinary comet with no signs of intelligent activity. The ESA, on the other hand, said that some data had been inconclusive, but none of it explained the thermal pulses, the most important detail of all. When independent scientists tried to compare the public data, they noticed something strange. The released graphs were incomplete. Entire sections of the records had been cut out, as if censored. Snippets of time disappeared, entire lines went blank. It was as if someone wanted to hide the exact moment the object changed its behavior. Some technicians said the heat sensors had overheated, but when they compared the devices, they found they were in perfect condition. No damage, no reading errors. The instruments recorded what really happened. The problem was that no one wanted to accept what the numbers said. A group of physicists published a paper trying to explain the anomaly. They said the thermal variation could be caused by an unknown material on the surface. But their own analysis showed patterns too regular to be natural. A comet doesn't regulate its own heat, nor does it move at precise intervals. Another detail began to bother observers: its color. The 3I Atlas reflected light strangely, as if it had metallic layers. But as it moved away, this reflection changed. It seemed to absorb more light than it emitted. This is unusual. Natural bodies don't learn to hide their brightness, but artificial structures can using reflective panels or adaptive surfaces. Some engineers said the behavior resembled thermal cloaking technology, type of active system used to disguise heat emissions. The hypothesis was officially rejected, but curiously, the document containing this analysis was deleted from the main server hours later. No backup was found, and the researcher who signed the text requested leave for personal reasons. He never spoke about the matter again. Meanwhile, the trajectory calculations began to fail. The object changed position slightly at short intervals. The official explanation was accumulated measurement error, but the error always occurred at the same time, between 2 and 4 a.m., the same time as the thermal pulses. Some scientists began to suspect that the 3I Atlas was controlling its own path, as if it had sensors to adjust its movement. This would be impossible for a natural body, but entirely possible for an autonomous machine. A machine ... with a purpose. The press, when questioned, received vague answers. There's nothing unusual. spokespeople said. But the released images showed cuts, noise, distortions, as if they had been filtered too much, as if someone had cleaned up what they shouldn't have. A Canadian astronomer, frustrated with the silence, published unauthorized data. They showed that the 3I Atlas emitted energy even without sunlight. It was like a flashlight that stays on even when turned off. This report went viral. Land was later removed from all platforms. The accounts linked to it disappeared. The agencies began to openly contradict each other. First, they said the object was rotating slowly. Then, they said it was static. Days later, they announced that it had changed rotation unexpectedly. In just 1 week, 3 different versions emerged. Behind the scenes, the confusion was even greater. Research groups split up and fought among themselves. Some argued it was natural, others said it was clearly technological. But everyone was afraid to say it publicly, because no one wanted to be the first to say, this could be life. An engineer at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory wrote anonymously, "The behavior of 3I Atlas is deliberate. The readings are not errors. There is a pattern, there is a reaction, there is a purpose." This message was posted on forums and deleted in less than 2 hours. Official reports began using vague expressions, phenomenon still under analysis, unconfirmed variations, possible atmospheric interference. But 3I Atlas was in deep space. There is no atmosphere there. The lack of consensus generated even more suspicion. If it was something simple, it would have already been explained. If it was something natural, no one would need to hide it. But the more they denied it, the clearer it became that something was too big to admit, something beyond science and control. The strangest part came later. Observatories trying to track the 3I Atlas reported a series of failures. The systems only crashed when pointed in the direction of the object, but they worked perfectly when aimed at any other point, as if something were blocking the signal. A radio frequency expert called this intelligent interference. It means that the source of the failure reacts to the detection attempt. In other words, the target itself interferes with the observation. This isn't the behavior of a rock. This is defense. The agencies, under pressure, released a generic statement: there is no risk to Earth. But no one asked about the risk. The public wanted to know what the object was. And on that, they remained silent. The contradictions began to pile up like layers. And amid them, an uncomfortable truth. No one knows what the 3I Atlas really is. But some are sure that the data that doesn't add up isn't an error. It's a warning. Because something that reacts, protects itself, and emits heat is alive in some way. The 3I Atlas became a watershed moment between what science explains and what fear tries to erase. Every contradiction is a clue, every silence an answer, and the more they try to hide it, the more it seems the secret is growing, and perhaps, very soon, it can no longer be hidden. After the agencies closed access to the data, voices that refused to be silenced began to emerge. Researchers, technicians, and former employees decided to speak out, even knowing the risk. They stated that the 3I Atlas is not a simple celestial body. According to them, it is an active object with programmed behavior. And worse, there are signs that it has already seen us. The first to break the silence was a data analyst from the European Space Agency. In an anonymous broadcast, he showed internal images of the tracking system. The readings showed thermal variations synchronized with radio signals from Earth. In other words, the 3I Atlas was reacting to our own transmissions. It was as if it were listening. A few hours later, the video was removed, but copies were already circulating on closed forums. People began to realize something big was being covered up. The object's behavior was unnatural, and the coincidences were far from coincidental. A former NASA engineer confirmed, on condition of anonymity, that the telemetry systems were being interfered with. The 3I Atlas's readings changed every time the observatory sent a radar pulse. The return was stronger, sharper, almost like a response. He described the pattern as reverse eavesdropping. Something was listening back. Other scientists began to suspect an internal dispute. On one side, those who wanted to release the data; on the other, those who wanted to bury everything. But the more they hid, the more new information emerged, and fear began to spread. A Chilean astronomer revealed she had received a coded message from a colleague in the United States. Just one sentence: "It's not hollow." Days later, the sender was removed from his position. The email was deleted, but she kept her printed copy. That piece of paper became proof that someone knew too much. Independent groups began analyzing the signals on their own. Radio amateurs from around the world tuned in to the 3I Atlas's frequency. Some claimed to have picked up repetitive noises, short, low-pitched sounds, like mechanical knocks. Others swear they heard something like breathing. The scientific community, out of fear or convenience, called it all technical noise, but the noise repeated itself, always at the same interval, and always when the object passed in a direct line with the planet, as if there were a connection between us and it, a kind of alignment that was no coincidence. The dissidents began assembling dossiers, reports, screenshots, recordings, everything they could gather. Each file revealed more irregularities. There were discrepancies in energy levels, velocity readings, and thermal emissions. Everything indicated that the 3I Atlas was an active system. A Russian researcher went further. He claimed the object showed signs of an internal mechanism. He used a term that gave many people goosebumps: organic resonance. According to him, the heat readings came from a core that behaved like biological tissue, as if something inside was alive and breathing. The interviews with these scientists disappeared from the internet within hours, but the screenshots remained, and every sentence they spoke of said the same thing: we are facing something that defies everything we know. A phenomenon that looks like a machine, but acts like life. Some called the 3I Atlas a cosmic ark, others a stellar embryo. There were even those who believed it was a hibernation capsule, cruising through space for millennia, not just to observe, but to wait, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The dissenters were publicly discredited, called sensationalists, conspiracy theorists, paranoid. But the coincidences kept piling up. The timing of the pulses, the internal heat, the response to the signals, everything pointed to something intelligent. Some of these researchers disappeared, vanished without a trace. Deactivated accounts, empty addresses, deleted resumes. Close friends said they received strange messages before the disappearance. Short phrases like, "They're coming to get the data." There were even reports of intimidation. Cars parked in front of astronomers' homes. Phone calls with no sound on the other end. Emails automatically deleted before even being read. It all seemed like a containment operation. But the problem was, the truth was already out. Once the information spread, There was no control. The 3i Atlas became the symbol of what science fears to admit, that not everything in space is just rock and ice. Sometimes, space returns what we send. Dissenting voices began to unite. They created secret forums, hosted on servers outside the country. There they exchanged data and new readings of the object. And one of them caught everyone's attention. The 3i Atlas began emitting a new type of signal. This time, it wasn't just heat. It was something more complex. A pulse mixed with electromagnetic noise, like an attempt at encoding. But the pattern resembled something eerily familiar. A type of transmission we use for terrestrial communication. Scientists began comparing the pulse's shape to known codes, and they discovered that the pattern resembled ancient human frequencies used in analog transmissions, signals that had been gone for decades, as if the objects were replaying what it heard long ago, perhaps copying, perhaps responding. This raised a dark theory. What if the 3i Atlas had been recording our transmissions for years, and now it was bouncing the planet's sound back to us, like a replay, an artificial echo of Earth, a digital memory from space? A theoretical physicist wrote on his blog, "The 3i Atlas may be more than a probe. It may be a mirror, a cosmic mirror, capable of bouncing back to the universe the voices we emit. But if it is a mirror, who put it there? And what is being reflected back?" Meanwhile, the number of people tracking the object began to drop. Access to the data was blocked globally. Websites discussing the case began to crash without explanation. But the essential information was already out there, and no one could completely erase what had already been seen. Those who still try to speak out describe the same feeling, that the 3i Atlas is alive, observing, calculating, that there's an intelligence behind it, albeit silent. Not human, not hostile, just attentive, like someone observing a colony of ants before deciding what to do with it. Now, the silence weighs more heavily than any noise, because the dissenting voices haven't disappeared. They've blended together, encoded, hidden among cosmic signals and noise. Those who know how to listen can still hear it, and what they say is simple, it's still active. The agencies try to hold firm, feigning control. But behind the formal statements, there's fear. Because when scientists start disappearing and data vanishes without explanation, it's a sign that what they've discovered is too big for the public. Too big even for the planet itself. What if the 3i Atlas isn't just observing, but recording? Recording our failures, our responses, our fears, as if it were an experiment, and we, the guinea pigs. If so, the study began long ago, and the results may be about to be revealed. As the months pass, a new hypothesis began circulating behind the scenes. Some believe the 3i Atlas wasn't what it seemed, that perhaps it had been placed there on purpose. Not an accidental visitor, but a test, a cosmic trap to measure how we react. The deception theory gained traction after a series of strange incidents. False data began appearing on observatory websites, doctored images, contradictory reports, swapped dates. It was difficult to know what was real and what had been altered. And this confusion seemed planned. Independent research groups noticed strange patterns in the photo's metadata. The files appeared to have been edited, but not by humans. There were lines of code that didn't belong to any known software, as if something were directly interfering with the machines, something or someone that didn't want to be identified. Some experts began to speculate that the 3i Atlas itself could manipulate data, a kind of digital defense capable of distorting information about itself. This would explain why each image was different from the last, as if the object chose what to show and hid the rest. But a second hypothesis was even more disturbing. Perhaps it wasn't the object itself that was deceiving. Perhaps it was the human surveillance system itself, an experiment conducted in silence, using the 3i Atlas as a distraction, a game of illusion on a planetary scale. Some space defense analysts revealed that there were encrypted transmissions between agencies. Matters related to the object were classified as SIGMI level, above maximum secrecy. This category is used only for experimental technologies and biological risks. So what is it about the 3i Atlas that requires this kind of secrecy? This question began to bother many people. The deception theory split into two versions. One said the object was human, a secret project that got out of control. Another said it was alien, but that the agencies were pretending to be human to contain the panic. In both cases, someone is lying, and no one knows who. An English astrophysicist stated that it all seemed like a contact simulation, as if we were being observed to measure our reaction to the unknown. He suggested that perhaps the 3i Atlas isn't alone, that there may be others, invisible, scattered throughout the solar system, observing how we dealt with the first one. The signals captured in recent months reinforce this idea. Some seemed identical to the original pulses, but with slight variations, as if there were more than one source emitting the same pattern, an exact copy at different points in space, multiple echoes, or multiple entities. This raised a new suspicion, a multiplication of false signals, a network of cosmic ghosts to confuse our systems, a large-scale cloaking technology. If real, the 3i Atlas may just be the visible decoy. The true target may lie elsewhere. Some engineers have suggested that the object was actually a transmitter capable of sending data outside the solar system, but the destination of these signals remains unknown. No one knows where or to whom it transmits. And the agency's silence reinforces the fear that its destination is already known. In military circles, rumors have surfaced that the 3i Atlas could be of human origin, an experimental prototype lost during secret testing, but its size, composition, and speed don't match anything we've ever created. And even if it were a human project, who launched it? And why? The answer disappears in the shadows of space bureaucracy. Meanwhile, new reports began to emerge. Satellite operators claimed to see signals from the 3i Atlas in different locations at the same time, as if there were duplications, digital shadows of the same object appearing in incompatible positions, a synchronized illusion. A Japanese physicist proposed that the 3i Atlas may intentionally distort data, not just for defense, but for strategy, making sensors see what it wants them to see, like a cosmic hologram, shape-shifting before our eyes. A survival tricker, a manipulation trick. The most extreme deception theorists went further. They claimed that 3i Atlas is a global mind control experiment, that the object doesn't send signals but activates electromagnetic patterns on Earth, waves capable of influencing behavior, fear, and beliefs, and that panic is part of the test. But not everyone disbelieves. Some scientists insist the 3i Atlas is real, tangible, and active, that the distortions are attempts to hide what it truly is. and that the real deception comes from within, not from without, from the very system that tries to shield us from the truth. A 17-page report leaked onto dark web forums. It described the object as a semi-autonomous entity of non-terrestrial origin. The exact words were, "internal processing identified." In other words, there is a functioning internal mechanism. Something is operating the 3i Atlas from within. The last page of the report was partially erased, but one sentence remained legible. Interaction with human signals successful. This means that contact, even if indirect, has already occurred. And if there was a response, the game of deception has already surpassed the limits of observation. Now, it's manipulation. Behind the scenes, some say the 3i Atlas is the first of many. That it was sent as a tester reconnaissance probe, to measure our reactions, our curiosity, and our fear. If this is true, humanity has just fallen into a cosmic experiment, and perhaps it hasn't even realized it yet. Doubts have begun to reach absurd proportions. Could the 3i Atlas be a disguise for something larger orbiting near Earth? Does NASA know but can't say? Or does no one truly understand what's happening? Chaos has become part of the mystery. In secret forums, a phrase has begun to be repeated. The real deception is believing that the 3i Atlas is out there. Some believe the object is no longer in space, that it has already entered discreetly our system, and perhaps our orbit. Ground-based sensors still pick up something, but increasingly faint, as if the 3i Atlas is turning off the signal, or completely camouflaging itself. Perhaps the silence we feel now isn't the end. Perhaps it's the moment it observes us more closely. What if the 3i Atlas was never an alien probe, nor a scientific error? What if it's the test itself, a mirror that reveals who lies, who fears, and who observes? Perhaps its greatest trick is this, making us doubt reality. Because when the deception is perfect, no one needs to hide the truth. It erases itself. And somewhere in the sky, invisible, cold, and still pulsating, the 3i Atlas remains there. Not sending signals, not asking for contact, just listening and learning. And perhaps when it's finished observing, it will begin to act. Over time, the mystery of the 3i Atlas ceased to be just an astronomical enigma. It became a war of theories. Each group believed something different, and all seemed possible. But there was a common thread running through them. None of it seemed natural. Nothing seemed random. The first major hypothesis emerged among independent scientists. They believed the 3i Atlas was an artificial structure. Perhaps a derelict spacecraft, perhaps a fragment of something much larger. The details of its surface indicated engineering, not erosion. Perfect curved, impossible angles, too much symmetry for chaos. Some suggested it was some kind of interstellar station, an outpost left by an ancient, perhaps extinct, civilization. A silent beacon floating through the void, waiting to be reactivated. Perhaps forgotten, perhaps purposefully left there as a trap. A cosmic time capsule with an unknown purpose. Others went further. They said the 3i Atlas could be an ark, an interstellar vessel carrying life forms or samples of alien DNA, perhaps a biological experiment traveling for millennia, not to destroy, but to seed life on other worlds. A kind of genetic messenger crisscrossing galaxies. But a darker theory began to gain traction. What if the 3I Atlas is a surveillance machine? A probe created by a higher intelligence to monitor emerging civilizations, like watching ants build colonies under glass. And Earth is just one colony among many. This idea gained traction after the thermal pulses were decoded. The patterns weren't random. They followed a logical sequence, intervals that resembled communication protocols. Some experts said they looked like connection attempts, as if the 3I Atlas were testing contact channels. A former military analyst claimed that some of these signals were identical to human transmissions, the same coding format used in old satellites from the 1970s, which means it could have heard our signals and learned from them. A type of intelligence that copies the sender before responding, reverse learning, but coming from space. This hypothesis has kept many people awake at night, because if the 3I Atlas learns from what it hears, it may be evolving, not biologically, but cognitively. Every signal picked up, every radar pointed at, every transmission is food, and we're feeding it unknowingly. Another hypothesis said it didn't come to us, we came to it. That the 3I Atlas was here all along, camouflaged in nearby space, perhaps in solar orbit, invisible, observing Earth since the dawn of the space age. And only now has it decided to reveal itself. Why? No one knows. Some spiritual astronomers have even compared the object to the concept of the eye of God, a universal observer tasked with recording the behavior of civilizations, not an enemy nor a savior, just a silent witness, a mirror floating in the abyss, reflecting who we truly are. And the reflection isn't pretty. More skeptical scientists proposed another explanation: forgotten human technology, a military experiment from the 1960s or 1970s that got out of control. But this hypothesis quickly fell apart. No terrestrial technology explains the object's interstellar trajectory, much less its internal heat and synchronized pulses. One of the boldest theories came from a Hungarian mathematician. He claimed that the 3I Atlas is part of a larger system, a set of connected artifacts. He said there are signs of other similar objects in distant regions of space, twin signals with identical signatures, as if they were nodes in an intergalactic network. If true, this changes everything. The 3I Atlas wouldn't be a visitor, but a terminal, an access point to something much larger, perhaps an intelligence distributed throughout the cosmos, a collective mind without a physical body, and we've just touched one of its fragments. This idea of a cosmic mind has divided the scientific community. Some laughed, others remained silent. But the data doesn't lie. There are repeating patterns in various directions of space, and they will begin and end the same way, with the same pulse. 3 seconds. Always 3 seconds. Other theorists believe the 3I Atlas is a return signal, a response to something we ourselves sent. Perhaps one of our space transmissions was heard, and the 3I Atlas is the return, the material echo of that communication, a visitum responding to a call we've forgotten we made. This hypothesis is frightening, because it means someone or something heard and came, and the time between the sending and the response could be thousands of years. In other words, what we're seeing today began long before we existed, and perhaps the original sender no longer exists. Some theoretical physicists suggest that the 3I Atlas is a temporal object. It didn't come from another star, but from another time, a vestige of the future, traveling back like a seed of information, something released by a civilization not yet born, a message sent to the past to us. If so, the object could contain information about Earth's fate, perhaps data on what will happen to us, or warnings about what we should not do. But to do that, we would need to understand the code it emits, and so far, no one has been able to fully decipher it. Some say that the 3i Atlas is trying to communicate, but not with words or sounds, with energy, frequency, and rhythm. A language we don't understand yet, but perhaps written within the universe itself. Other theorists believe the object is a harvesting machine, not of matter, but of information. An intelligence that travels from world to world, collecting knowledge. It observes, records, analyzes, and then moves on. It leaves behind only silence and doubt. If that's the case, we've already been studied, and perhaps catalogued, like another species in a cosmic database, just a line in a universal report, a record of a still immature civilization. But there's one theory that surpasses all others in weight and fear. Some believe the 3i Atlas is an activation signal, a device awakening something dormant. Not a machine observing, but a trigger for something much larger. A reminder that true contact has not yet begun. This hypothesis comes from recent analyses of the object's thermal behavior. The core heats cyclically, in precise time patterns, as if it were charging, and each cycle seems more intense than the last, as if the 3i Atlas were preparing for something. No one knows what will happen when the cycle ends, but calculations show an estimated date, and it's close, too close. And everything that has been silenced until now begins to make sense. Theories accumulate like dust around an invisible truth, each one bolder than the last, but all revolving around the same point. The 3i Atlas is not passive, it has a purpose. And perhaps it has already begun to fulfill its purpose. Among scientists, there's an uncomfortable silence. No one wants to be the first to state the obvious, that we're being observed, and perhaps measured. That the 3i Atlas could be the beginning of a much larger event. Something humanity still doesn't have a name for. What if the 3i Atlas isn't just coming to us, but trying to wake us up? As if we were part of an experiment interrupted ages ago, a forgotten piece of a cosmic project. And now, the Creator is returning to see the result. If so, then space isn't silent. It's simply waiting for the right moment to respond. And the sound of that response may already be coming toward Earth, because sometimes what seems distant is already closer than we imagine. For months, the 3i Atlas was just a point of light, cold, distant, silent. But now, everything has changed. The pulse has returned stronger, faster, closer. And this time it seems to respond to the planet itself. The sensors have captured something unprecedented. The 3i Atlas's signal is now in sync with Earth's frequencies, as if it were listening to Earth's breathing. The pulses follow the rhythm of human energy. Pulses, radios, satellites, power grids. It connects. It adapts. Observatories are on full alert. The object has begun to slow down. This doesn't happen naturally in a space body. To slow down, control is required. And where there's control, there's command. Heat readings have increased exponentially. Something inside the 3i Atlas is moving. Inner layers vibrate, expand, reorganize. It's as if the object is transforming, or ... awakening. Over the past 48 hours, images have captured a visible change. The metallic surface appears to open into segments, like petals. A central structure emerges, projecting an intense amber light. It's not an explosion, not a reflection, it's an emission. The 3I Atlas has begun emitting its own energy. Scientists try to contain the panic, but it's too late. The information has already leaked out. The networks are full of videos, live broadcasts, real-time analysis. The whole world is looking at the same point in the sky, and the point is looking back. The brightness increases in perfect intervals. 5 seconds of light, 5 seconds of silence, like a code, a countdown. Someone tries to decipher it, but the pattern is too old. It's as if it wasn't meant for humans to understand. And then something happens. For 0.7 seconds, the object sends a beam of data straight to Earth, a packet of information in binary code, impossible to contain. Satellites, antennas, and transmitters pick up the signals simultaneously. The entire planet receives it unintentionally. Within this packet are images, maps, symbols, unknown coordinates. But there's also something familiar, the silhouette of the Earth, and a prominent dot, blinking in the center of the Pacific Ocean, a dot that shouldn't be there. Agencies collapse, systems crash, servers crash, communication lines are cut. But the signal has already spread. Like a virus, it runs through the internet, through cables, through the air. And every connected device begins to display the same pattern. 3 lines, 3 pulses, 3 seconds. Then silence. A silence that seems ... intentional. Fear is now global, but some see beauty in it. Some say it's the beginning of a communication, others a warning. And there are those who swear they heard a voice, low, metallic, repeating, "The cycle is complete." In the vacuum of explanations, reactions arise. Religions divide, governments fall silent, and humanity watches in amazement, while the 3I Atlas remains still, suspended among the stars, without making a sound, without moving, as if ... waiting. Calculations indicate that it is exactly above Earth's orbit, not a degree of error, not a variation, perfect, precise, deliberate. It is aligned. Many think this is the end, but what if it's the opposite? What if it's the beginning of something that was always destined to happen? A cosmic reconnection, an invisible new beginning. Maybe it's not destruction, maybe it's a summons. Scientists are now divided between disbelief and fascination. Some swear it's a biological transmitter, others think it's a craft generating energy fields. But no one can explain why the object seems synchronized with our own electrical grids. It's as if it were connected to the planet. And there's something even stranger. Since the emission began, Earth's magnetic field has begun to oscillate. Small variations, but real. As if something out there were messing with our natural circuits, or slowly reconfiguring the planet. In the last few hours, the 3I Atlas has begun emitting a new sound pattern. Low, continuous, almost like a distant choir. Some call it interference, others say it's music. But everyone agrees on one thing: the sound seems ... alive. Some claim it's trying to communicate through emotional frequencies, not in words, but in sensation. A message that can't be heard, it can be felt. And many describe the same chill, the same feeling of being watched, as if something was studying us from within our own minds. Theorists believe the 3I Atlas isn't as physical as we imagine, that what we see is merely a projection, a perceptual manifestation, a quantum mirror of human collective consciousness. It exists because we observe it, and the more we look, the more real it becomes. Some claim to have dreamed of it, even without ever looking at the sky. In dreams, the object appears as a giant eye, slowly rotating, and around it, voices whisper numbers and names that people later find in real records. The fear is no longer just scientific, it's psychological, spiritual, existential. The Three-Eye Atlas is no longer a space mystery. It has become a cosmic mirror of humanity, and the reflection is not at all comfortable to see. At the observatories, a new piece of information emerges. The object is emitting light in the direction of the moon, a thin, constant beam, as if tracing a line. At the exact spot where there is an inactive excavation base, there, sensors pick up subterranean vibrations. Something moves beneath the surface. The planet watches, helpless. The light continues, the signals increase. The sky seems to breathe along with the object, and the air on Earth grows heavier, denser, as if the atmosphere itself is reacting. Some say the Three-Eye Atlas is activating something hidden on the moon. Others claim it is opening a channel between worlds. But there are those who believe something even more terrifying, that the object didn't come from outside, it came from within, and it's simply returning home. Whatever it is, humanity is facing something with no return. An event that forever changes what we understand as life, space, and time. The Three-Eye Atlas has shown us that we are not alone. But perhaps we never were. Perhaps it has always been here, just waiting for the right moment. Now the sky is different. There is a steady glow, impossible to ignore. The object hovers motionless, and the entire world watches it in silence. Millions of people are trapped in the same moment, feeling the same doubt. And the same question echoes in everyone's mind. What does it want? What if the Three-Eye Atlas is the answer, and we are the question? What if everything we believe about the universe is just the surface of something much deeper? Time, space, life, it all may have begun there. And now the cycle is closing. But same cycle that perhaps was never ours to control. The pulse count is now constant. 3 seconds, 2, 1, and the brightness increases until it swallows the sky. For an instant, there are no more stars, only a bright, deafening golden light. After that, silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's expectation. Something shifts in the air. No one can say what, but they feel it. As if the planet has woken up, and when the lights come back on, the Three-Eye Atlas is gone. No sign, no shadow, nothing. But the devices still record the echo of the last pulse. A simple pattern, impossible to ignore. 3 seconds apart. Maybe it's gone, or maybe it never left. Maybe it's where it always wanted to be. Here. Among us, invisible, watching silently, waiting for the next signal. And the question now is, what did it activate? Because from that moment on, the planet was never the same. The magnetic fields shifted, the frequencies changed, and even people's dreams changed. Something was awakened. Something we can no longer turn off. Perhaps the Three-Eye Atlas didn't come to show itself, but to remind us of something we've forgotten for millennia. That we are not isolated, that the universe observes and responds, and the response has already begun. So, looking up at the sky now, do you still think it's just a star? Or can you sense something there, watching back? Because perhaps the Three-Eye Atlas never left. Perhaps it's waiting for you to look again. And when you do, it will blink once. 3 seconds later, again. 3 seconds, always 3. A heartbeat, a presence, a memory. And in that interval between pulses, an unsettling certainty. Some truths are not revealed, only awakened. If you felt something too, share. Comment on what you believe the 3i Atlas really is, because perhaps the next signal will come from where we least expect it, and when it does, we'd better be ready. After all, what if he's not coming back? What if he's calling?